spicy question. How did you find yourself in AI? I talk to a lot of young people, and when I talk to them, I'm like, hey, when you graduate, you're going to take a job that hasn't been invented yet. So how did you find yourself to AI? What was your journey? Because I think everybody's journey has been a little bit different. So maybe we'll start with you, Ayaz.
All right, buddy. First of all, thank you for having me on the panel, and thank you to the audience for braving the rain and the storms to come out here. I'm Ayaz Minhas with Meta's AI policy team as a privacy policy manager. My journey to AI, right after law school, I was practicing criminal law. Didn't like that very much. I wanted to make some more impact, so I moved over to privacy law, where I worked on ad tech self-regulation. Did that for a few years, then ran the privacy program for a startup, then came to Meta, where I've been for the past couple of years, mostly providing policy guidance around AI for infrastructure, AI governance, AI red teaming, and other privacy-adjacent issues. So that's me.
Nice. Addie Cooke. I am the Cloud AI Public Policy Lead at Google, which means I support all of our enterprise AI products. This means I'm sort of like part product policy, part policy advisor to like internal teams. And then I also spend a lot of time on our AI Principles Review Committee, so I do a lot of AI governance unpacking, which is super fun. My journey to AI actually makes more sense than yours. I was working on the Cuba embargo before AI. So President Obama had decided to reestablish diplomatic relations with Cuba. My Senate Chief of Staff was like, do you want to go work on this? And I'm like, yeah, I get to go to Cuba. That would be amazing. Sadly, that didn't shake out, but AI was popping, and so I went over to Accenture, you know, a main integrator of AI these days, and long story short, ended up at Google a couple of moons later.
It feels like you missed a step there, but we'll let it pass. Long story short, I ended up at Google, but yes. And Cass, we're happy you joined us as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to be here. My name is Cass Matthews, and I joined the Office of Responsible AI at Microsoft at the end of last year, which was quite a time to join that team. So I support, as the first counsel for the team, I support a multidisciplinary group that look at responsible AI from lots of different angles and support the orchestration of responsible AI across the company. Prior to that, I was at Google. I was at, more specifically, Jigsaw, and I guess that's how I came to AI, because I was working, well, Jigsaw is focused on threats and harms to open societies and how technology can help in those spaces. So way back in 2015, 2016, they launched a product that was machine learning based, and so from that point we were really leaning into all of the challenges that are involved in having a machine learning product, you know, and they were very early in looking at issues like bias and transparency. So I worked on all that stuff with them, which was really led not by responsible AI at that time, but by the actual engineers and data scientists. So it was a really interesting way to kind of come at those problems and see that kind of collaboration across a small team like Jigsaw.
Can I ask a follow-up? How many years have you been working with ML or AI-related technologies?
Almost 7 years.
Just 2 years for me, but a privacy lawyer before that.
Yeah, right?
And criminal lawyer.
2015, so 23 minus 15.
That's like
eight years.
It's the beginning. Like, these folks have been working in ML since the beginning. Let's be super clear. Like, privacy is basically 80% of ML, in my opinion. So, you know, the evolution from like really large data to ML is a very logical one to me. I know it's not logical to you. But I also chased secure data privacy to ML. And this is the beginning of days. This technology hasn't been defined for very long. So it's very interesting days, because we're starting to see some of the longer term consequences, because ML has now been around long enough for us to have data about the consequence. So, you know, I was very excited by DEF CON. I'll tell you why. I worked for Meta and for Google too, not Microsoft. Scary. And I was surprised that we all came together on this one. I'm not gonna lie. I was surprised by the public-private partnership. I was surprised that we had 8 large language models that all came to the table and helped us design. And I'm kind of curious, maybe Ayaz and Adi. I'm going to mess this up so badly. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about kind of the conversations that had to happen in order for you to come and participate in this event, where it's basically laying bare all the ways that LLMs can be trashed and guardrails violated.
Yeah, so many thoughts. And Ayaz earlier in the back room described it as like pushing a boulder uphill, and I like totally agree with that. But let me say, the reason I even got involved is because 7 years ago, I started this AI journey, like supporting Ruman when she was at Accenture as the head of responsible AI. So when I found out that she was involved with this event, I think for me, and a really big takeaway is like trusted organizers, and like organizers who have your company and your brand's interest at heart, because that's ultimately what we're one of the things that we're evaluating, right? Can we trust our brand in the hands of these people in a first of its kind of event? And that's the boulder, right? It's like convincing everybody, yes, we can trust, because our partners are also at the table too. That also, I think, was a big motivator. It was knowing we're all in this together was really helpful. I could go on and on, but I'm going to let you jump in.
And certainly on our end, I think we viewed it as a tremendous opportunity that was consistent with the spirit of our open access view about AI. We open licensed Llama 2 some months ago, and we wanted the AI developer community and the research community and the academic communities and the commercial community to stress test and examine these assets and identify areas for improvement. So DEF CON and the 2,500 hackers and red teamers and students that were a part of the DEF CON community allowed us to move that forward. And I also think with the White House AI commitments for frontier models, there'll be emerging opportunities for all of us to work together and consider issues of AI safety and how to manage AI risk as a new chapter in the ongoing story about how our companies work together.
Well, and that was a huge other motivator, which was, the fact that the U.S. government had put out these commitments, we'd all signed the commitments, and this was like Ruman and the co-organizers presented an opportunity to demonstrate the commitments. Like, we put out independently as companies opportunities, to your point. We wanted to test BARD, we want to test Llama 2. Personally, we want to be able to showcase some of our years-long red teaming experience with cyber threats and obviously fairness testing, but this was an opportunity to demonstrate. And sometimes, like, that's not an obvious thing. Like, those don't just pop out of nowhere. It, like, really takes some foresight and organizing.
Cass, so my first career pivot was in government. And I will say that the public-private partnership with Microsoft was pretty special when I worked for defense. And tell me a little bit about kind of how did we get to public-private partnership? There's so much hype out there that there's so much adversarialism between public entities and private entities. And I never personally experienced that, but tell me a little bit about public-private partnerships at Microsoft.
Yeah, happy to. And excuse me, sorry. Forefront in my mind, obviously, is the AI White House commitments that we recently made. And that was a really collaborative process, where everyone just came to the table and tried to meet that balance where everyone's trying to get to, which is to understand what guardrails we need to put in place in order to ensure that this technology can get out there and benefit society. So if you think about it like that, we're trying to get to the same place. What information do we need to share with each other so that we can get to a space where everyone can feel comfortable with that moving forward? So that was a really collaborative process, going backwards and forwards, in order to get to the point where we could make those commitments to safety of these systems moving forward. And I think moving on from that, one of the commitments, talking a bit more about the partnership aspect of it, one of those commitments was obviously that we do have these, opportunities to share best practices among different, among the leading AI companies. And we're already seeing that happen with the Frontier Model Forum and lots of opportunities there, critical opportunities to be sharing best practices. And it's interesting to see, I think, whether or not this beneficial and great work stream that we've been talking about would start to inform some of the work streams that we have for the Frontier Model Forum.
Yeah, you actually reminded me that, we've often thought about security as sort of an ecosystem, like we have to be sharing, threat intelligence sharing with the government's in DoD, that's a really big topic. And what this event talked about was like, we all have adversarial fairness capabilities internally. We've had them for years with all of our experience with ML, but now we've had the opportunity to say, okay, well, what does fairness threat sharing look like as a community too? And that's what's really interesting.
Well, and it's evolving. It's such a new space, to be honest. Like, a threat in the security world is fairly understandable. A threat in the ML space is not as easily understood. And I think that there's a lot of opinion. I think that there's a lot of people researching, and it's a great opportunity. Did you all know each other's, the peer group that you met as part of this process? Like, is this a close-knit group?
I mean, yes, like I know Cass, I know her team. I do a monthly call with people on her team. I know everybody around.
We know people that know each other, so it's within one degree of connection, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely, I make a point because, it is helpful to understand, well, how are you seeing this? And each provider here takes a slightly different approach to our offerings. So it's always helpful to talk through.
Well, and collaboration isn't new just in the ML space. I mean, I recall other safety-related topics where there's sharing of kind of like how to protect children, for example. There are ways that we always coopetition. What's the right word? Can we coin a phrase? Because it's important when the stakes are high. Like, what are some high-stake areas that we can draw from?
I mean, CSAM is like, you worked on this front and center. Like, Google owns the API to monitor the internet for child sexual safety material, and I know that Microsoft actually licenses the API for its own use too. I assume Meta, you would know actually better than me. But that's a great example of a high stakes use case for
and I think GIFCT is the other example, like coordinating over extremist content and reducing the prevalence of it in our various spaces.
Yeah, I think that fraud analysis as well, make sure that we don't have anti-money laundering concerns and things like that. So when safety is at risk, when the stakes are high, cooperation trumps competition, maybe? What do you think about ML? Do we reach that level of importance? Is this a place where we can maybe look forward to safety-related collaborations?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think having those kind of tight conversations and, again, those opportunities to learn from best practices, because as Addie said, we're all coming at it from slightly different. We all have different things to bring to the table, and combining them and having the different perspectives, and combining, especially not just the big tech companies, but having a broader set of perspectives come in as well, and the opportunities to hear those and to share them. That's going to be critically important, I think, to get this right, because we are at the start of this, and so I think these kind of collaborations are going to be really critical moving forward, so that we can get the baseline aspects right.
And I think taking the research and the results from events like DEF CON, or possibly future results, and using the findings to marry those findings with our own internal research and our own internal expertise, and see if we can continually improve our red teaming and adversarial testing practices, I think that could be a strong benefit as well.
I cannot wait for those results. And this was publicly announced that we're going to be able to publish the results. We're going to also publish, hopefully, some specific use cases from each of the companies to understand what we learned. But beyond that, one of the things that I'm digging into a little bit is, what are the public policy takeaways? This was a significant event that was hosted, sponsored by the White House, but surely other governments are going to be interested. The White House will be interested in this. So, I think it's incumbent upon us, and we will. We're there's a lot of things to sort through coming out of this event, but high on our list is, what should we be sharing with governments? We're going to come together as companies and publish all of these various outputs, and I'm really excited for the outputs part. We're kind of trolling through that. I keep my team makes fun of me. I say trolling through the data. He's like, that's not a thing.
I'm not sure trolling is the word, but
Why I keep saying it.
I love it. Oh man, shiny object. We're trying to draw from some learnings from security and other kind of like evolutions of data protection and understanding. You know, when I've been a security engineer a long time, a lot of gray hair. One of the big pivots in security and really making products much more secure was bug bounties. Like bug bounties had a transformative effect. What is the role of the public in participating in your development world? Like how important is it for people outside of your organizations and the feedback that they have? How important is it to bring it back in?
I mean, this is a interesting way to answer the question, but last year alone, Google gave away $12 million to people who identified bugs in our products. And I know Ruman was sort of the founder of like the first fairness bug bounty, and I think it was really interesting to see that pivot towards like, okay, what if we did this and took it public, and then we got all of these companies involved. I think this is the next generation of bug bounty. It's just it's coming out a little bit different than the one we've experienced in cybersecurity, because to your point, it's unique. It's like it's not the same. It's not as cut and dry.
You know what was interesting about that first one, DEF CON 29? I was at Twitter with Ruman when we ran that one. The sentiment reporting for that was one of the highest. It was neutral and positive, 98%. And we had just called an algorithm racist. But being open, transparent, contributory, offering the world the opportunity to come analyze the results, participate. It seems like openness had a really positive kind of reaction in industry. So I'm hopeful that this will continue. But I think that people, we believe at Humane Intelligence that the public should be contributing to the improvement algorithms. That's kind of like core to who I am. What other feedback mechanisms do you think might be in our future?
Well, from our perspective, one of the things we're trying to do is to get feedback on our approach to responsible AI. So to that end, Microsoft has been pretty forward and had a habit of publishing a lot of our findings. In terms of red teaming, certainly we've been doing that for many years. And recently we've published how we approach red teaming, so our red teaming guide to LLMs. So putting those things out there and including all of our responsible AI materials, such as our standard and our impact assessment, all that material's out there, and opening a dialogue with people to give feedback around that. But some of the other ways that we've been sort of more strategic about getting feedback from people outside the company on how we're approaching things is, for example, the Responsible AI Fellowship that we launched this year in conjunction with the Stimson Center Strategic Foresight Hub. And that fellowship, which has had a great start, is designed to bring together a diverse group of people who are looking at responsible AI or looking at AI across developing countries, and that shows up in a way. It's coming as like a strategic, like a bunch of structured conversations where it's just a space to talk about. Have experts come together and talk about how AI can be developed responsibly and how we should be thinking about this in different regions. And that's been a great. I mean, I've had the benefit of being a part of those kind of conversations, and they're really meaty and fruitful, and everyone comes away really feeling like they've learned something. So that's been really beneficial for our office, certainly, and hopefully for the whole company as we roll out that, and for other people as well, because we're going to be publishing the summaries of those conversations. So hopefully that will be beneficial for the ecosystem.
I think sometime in the next year, we have a community forum that's planned with a division of Stanford on generative AI, so we're looking forward to getting feedback from that forum. We did a similar forum about the metaverse and had some public feedback about that technology. But I would also say that our responsible use guide for Llama 2, that also talks about for our downstream developers as a recommendation, reinforcement learning with human feedback, and to the extent those downstream developers deploy and utilize our assets, getting human feedback and and incorporating them into your data flywheel to train reward models and improve, continually improve and fine-tune your version of the model. So our responsible use guide speaks to that.
Nice. Well, oh, please. Final thought, because we're getting the hook.
Oh, okay, the hook. So I'll just say, just to add on, one thing that we think is really important for community feedback is actually through things like human rights impact assessments. So we work with a group called Business for Social Responsibility, and it is our opportunity on particular products. You know, if you're taking a risk-based approach to AI, which is very difficult to do, every technology is sort of neutral. It's the use cases themselves that are risky at times. And you know, when we identify those, working with a group who can help us solicit feedback on the human rights implications is a huge part of AI and a huge part of this work. And I think that's another area for growth for moving forward.
All right, so now I have a question for the community. We can't take questions, but I have a question for you. How many of you would want to participate in feedback sessions with algorithms that you've interfaced with? Right? Everybody. You should want to. If you see something, you should be able to say something and have it mean something. So that's what we're going toward. I'm really happy we could talk about collaborations. I'm sorry we have to, but I'm not sorry because you have a great panel coming up. But thanks for your attention and time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.